My name is Amani Washington, and I am 26 years old. When my grandparents met a tragic end in a vehicular collision, my family harbored expectations of inheriting their immense fortune, amounting to $38 million. Throughout my life, I had been cast as the family's designated scapegoat, the quiet, seemingly insignificant art history major. Therefore, when their legal representative began to read the testament, a profound stillness enveloped the entire assembly. To everyone's astonishment, my grandparents had bequeathed their entire fortune, every last cent, to me. My father's immediate demand was for me to relinquish the inheritance. I refused. That very night, they cast me out onto the streets. The following morning, they appeared at my grandparents' opulent estate with the intention of forcibly removing me. However, their progress halted abruptly when they beheld the individual standing resolutely beside me. Before I recount the precise events that transpired in that solicitor's chamber and reveal the identity of my companion on that porch, please share in the comments section where you are tuning in from. And should you ever find yourself underestimated or betrayed by those who ought to have been your staunchest protectors, kindly press the like button and subscribe. This narrative explores the consequences when the family's perennial outcast finally gains access to the keys of power. The atmosphere within Mr. Howard Jameson's mahogany-paneled study felt oppressively dense. I occupied a small leather chair in the corner, attempting to physically diminish myself. The synthetic blend of my inexpensive interview attire felt uncomfortably abrasive against my skin. My relatives were seated in the front row, adopting an air of regal entitlement. My father, David Washington, aged 55, impatiently tapped his gold Rolex against the armrest of his seat. My mother, Monique, 54, dabbed at her impeccably dry eyes with a silk handkerchief, her pearl necklace shimmering. My elder brother, Marcus, the 30-year-old favored son, was engaged in hushed conversation with his wife, Tiffany. Tiffany, 29, emitted an exaggerated sigh. She was a Caucasian woman who had married into our African American family's perceived old money circles with a rather ferocious eagerness. "I sincerely hope this will be brief, Marcus," she whispered, her voice carrying loudly enough for all to hear. "We have 1 o'clock reservations at St. Cecilia. I absolutely refuse to miss that reservation." Marcus merely offered a chuckle and patted her hand. "Just a formality, my dear. Merely signing the documents." Mr. Jameson finally entered. He was a tall, imposing man in his 60s, a close confidant of my grandfather and an executive. He commanded the room with his presence. "We are convened," he began, his voice deep and steady, "to execute the final will and testament of Theodore and Eleanor Washington." My mother produced a single performative sniffle. They were such benevolent, generous souls. They adored their family immeasurably. My father cut her off. "Let us get to the crux of the matter, Howard. We are all aware of their generosity. We know they cherished us, the Buckhead estate, the stock portfolio. They've designated everything to Marcus and me to perpetuate the Washington family's business legacy. Please expedite that section so we can proceed to our luncheon." Monique chimed in, casting a glance back at me with an expression of feigned sympathy. "Oh, Imani, my darling, do not trouble your pretty little head. We shall ensure you are adequately provided for. We might even be able to secure a modest, clean apartment for you somewhere. You will be quite all right." Provided for? That had always been their veiled suggestion for me to remain in my subservient position. Mr. Jameson fixed a stern gaze upon my father. "Actually, David, their instructions were exceedingly precise." He donned his reading spectacles and opened the substantial document. After considerable deliberation, he read aloud, "We bequeath our entire estate, encompassing all real property holdings, all stock portfolios, and all trusts, valued at an estimated $38 million. The rhythmic tapping of the Rolex ceased. The room collectively held its breath. To the sole individual in whom we place our trust to uphold our genuine legacy and not merely our financial assets, our granddaughter, Amani Washington. All of it, silence descended. It was a heavy, resonant, and almost violent silence. Clack. Tiffany's expensive alligator skin clutch slipped from her lap, striking the polished hardwood floor. I watched as if in slow motion as my brother Marcus's smug, ruddy complexion transformed into a sickly, pale purple. 38 million, he stammered, the words catching in his throat. Impossible. My mother, Monique shrieked, her voice cracking, shattering the facade of the grieving matriarch into 1,000 fragments. The pretense of sorrow vanished, replaced by raw, unadulterated venom. There has been an error, Howard. You have misread it. That is simply not possible. She whipped her head around to confront me, her eyes narrowing with a profound disgust that I had recognized my entire existence. Imani, the girl with the utterly useless art philanthropy job, she cannot even manage a checkbook. She cannot even cover her own phone bill. That is because you insist on keeping me on the family plan to monitor my calls, Mother, I whispered, though my words were lost in the charged air. What does she, Monique spat, know about managing finances? Silence, Monique, David roared. He slammed his hand down on the mahogany table, causing the water pitcher to rattle. His entire body convulsed with fury. He rose to his feet, looming over me, his face darkening to a frightening shade of red. Howard, what is this preposterous notion? The old man has lost his faculties. He was not of sound mind. We intend to contest this will. I assure you Mr. Jameson's voice was icy. Mr. Washington was perfectly lucid when he affixed his signature. We possess medical certifications. Furthermore, we have a video recording of the entire signing process. My father's head snapped toward me. His eyes, small and menacing, seemed to pin me to my chair. Imani, what have you done? What fabrications did you feed them? I did nothing, I managed to utter, my voice barely audible. All those years, my mother, Monique, hissed, her false sadness completely evaporated, supplanted by unvarnished venom. All those years we funded your pursuit of that nonsensical degree in art preservation or whatever trifle it is. I urged your father to enroll you in business school, but no, you simply had to be different. You owe this family. Do you comprehend me? You are merely a girl. The business legacy rightfully belongs to Marcus. Precisely, Amani, Marcus interjected, attempting a tone of reason, though his avarice gleamed in his eyes. Let us all endeavour to maintain composure. This is merely a procedural matter. Evidently, Grandma and Grandpa intended for us to manage this on your behalf. My business requires a new infusion of capital. This presents a perfect opportunity. Tiffany, having retrieved her purse, adjusted her makeup in a compact mirror. We have already placed the deposit on the new Gwagon, Amani, she stated, as if reprimanding a child. And my wardrobe is simply in dire need of attention. We cannot be expected to cancel these arrangements. They were already squandering my inheritance before my very eyes. They lacked even the basic pretense of civility. My father pointed a thick finger directly at my face. Enough, Imani. We will sign the necessary documents to transfer every dollar into the family trust immediately. I shall manage it precisely as it was always intended. I gazed at that finger. I looked at his enraged countenance. I observed my mother's malevolent sneer, my brother's greedy smirk, and my sister-in-law's vapid sense of entitlement. I felt the backbone that my grandparents had so diligently cultivated over my 26 years finally solidify. I inhaled deeply. I met my father's gaze directly. For the first time in my existence, I did not avert my eyes. No. The word was soft, yet it detonated in the room like an explosive. What? David's voice was a low, guttural growl. What did you say? Monique shrieked, clutching her pearls. I said no, I repeated. My voice was considerably louder now, clear and unyielding. It is my inheritance. Grandma and Grandpa entrusted it to me. I rose to my feet, my legs trembling, but I stood firm. I will not hand it over to you. I paused, then delivered the final decisive blow. Especially, I declared, since I am fully aware of precisely what you intend to do with it. The colour drained from my father's face. The anger momentarily receded, replaced by a flicker of sheer primal panic. He understood that I knew. He knew I had seen the reports my grandfather had shared with me. He knew I was aware that his ostensibly successful consulting firm was nothing more than a house of cards, drowning in $2 million of debt. You, he whispered, you ungrateful wretch! He lunged, his hand, open and heavy, was aimed directly at my face. I flinched, anticipating the stinging impact I knew all too well. David! Mr. Jameson's voice cut through the air like a lash. He was on his feet in an instant, his imposing frame interposing itself directly between me and my father. Do not lay a hand on my client. My father froze, his hand still suspended in midair. This meeting, Mr. Jameson stated, his voice descending to a dangerous calm, is concluded. Kindly depart my office, all of you. He straightened his tie. Ms. Washington will remain. My hands trembled so violently that I could barely sign the taxi receipt. Mr. Jameson had offered me a ride in his Bentley, but I had declined. I could not bear for him to witness the dwelling I inhabited, the attic room I still occupied at the age of 26. As the taxi sped away from the gleaming skyscrapers of downtown Atlanta, my father's visage flashed through my mind. The fury in his eyes, his hand raised to strike me. It was not the first time he had regarded me with such profound animosity. A memory, sharp and stinging, pierced through the shock of the $38 million. I was 18 again, standing in our living room, clutching my acceptance letter. I got it, I had whispered, my voice quivering with elation. The full art scholarship to Spelman. My father had not even looked up from his newspaper. He had simply extended his hand. I handed him the letter. He read it, a sneer contorting his lips. And then deliberately he tore it in two, then into four, then into 8 pieces. Washingtons are in business, he had declared, his voice frigid. We do not squander our time on childish scribbles. I had fled to my room, my heart utterly shattered. The following morning, my grandmother, Ara, had come to me. She sat on the edge of my bed and quietly placed an envelope in my hand. Your grandfather and I have taken care of it, she had stated, her voice firm. Your father will believe it is a student loan. You go to school, Amani. You go and you shine. She had cupped my chin. Your light is brilliant, my darling girl. Never allow them to dim it. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the taxi window. I thought of her in the hospital just a few months ago. Her hand felt so fragile, yet her grip remained strong. Your silence has been your shield, Amani, she had whispered, her voice raspy. It has kept you safe, but you must recognize when it is time to cease shielding and begin to roar. The taxi pulled up to the curb. I observed the house. I knew, as I handed the driver his fare, that the time to roar had finally arrived. The taxi deposited me at the curb of the brick residence I had called home my entire existence. I paid the driver, my body feeling strangely numb, and proceeded up the familiar concrete pathway. Then I halted. My belongings lay strewn across the front lawn. Not my entire life, merely the fragments of it. My 2 scuffed suitcases, a sagging cardboard box labelled art books. and a large black trash bag. Without even looking, I knew the bag contained my clothing, forcibly ripped from hangers and drawers and unceremoniously stuffed inside. It was all deposited on the grass mere inches from the curb, akin to refuse awaiting collection. For a moment my mind struggled to process the scene. My brain searched for a logical explanation. Perhaps a leak in my room? They were airing things out? The front door swung open and that faint hope dissolved. My mother, Monique, stood in the doorway. She was not weeping. Her face was a mask of cold, unyielding satisfaction. She held a glass of white wine in one hand, appearing as serene as if she were preparing to host a dinner party. "Mother," I whispered, my voice sounding foreign. "What is happening? Why is my property outside?" Monique took a slow, deliberate sip of her wine. "You made your decision," she stated, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "You made it abundantly clear in Mr. Jameson's office. You chose wealth over your family." "That is untrue," I countered, my voice trembling. "He attempted to strike me. You were attempting to abscond with my inheritance. You humiliated your father," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "You brought shame upon this entire family in front of that legal representative. You are no longer the daughter I raised." She surveyed me from head to toe, her lip curling in palpable disdain. "In fact, you are not my daughter at all, not any longer. We are finished with you, Imani, finished with me." The words felt like stones lodged in my throat. "You cannot simply, you are my mother, this is my home." "I mean nothing to you," she spat, "and this is not your home, not a moment longer." "That is sufficient, Monique," my father, David, declared, pushing past her. He was vibrating with a suppressed, terrifying rage. He held not a wine glass, but a thick stack of papers and a pen. "I am granting you one final opportunity," he stated, his voice dangerously subdued. "One last chance to rectify this predicament you have created. One opportunity to reintegrate yourself into this family." He thrust the papers toward my chest. I flinched, catching them before they could fall. I did not need to read the title. I knew precisely what it was. A power of attorney, a complete asset transfer. "Sign this right here, at this very moment," he commanded, clicking the pen and presenting it to me. "Sign everything over to the family trust. I will manage it as it was always meant to be. If you do this, we can then forget this regrettable little rebellion of yours." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Sign it, or you are off my property." "This is not solely your property," I replied, a faint spark of defiance igniting within me. "Grandmama contributed to the down payment for this house. I am aware of it." I ignored his face, mere inches from mine. "Or depart. You are not welcome here." "What is all the commotion about?" My brother Marcus and his wife Tiffany emerged from the doorway, hovering behind my parents like a pair of eager scavengers. "Oh, observe!" Tiffany exclaimed. Her voice was a high-pitched, cruel peal of laughter. She immediately produced her phone and began recording me. "It's the $38 million millionaire, and she's... oh my goodness, look at her meager possessions. She's destitute." Marcus snickered, crossing his arms, thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. "Evidently, that art preservation degree doesn't include housing, does it, Imani? Truly lamentable. Terribly, terribly sad." "Please," I implored, tears of pure, burning humiliation stinging my eyes. "Cease, just stop recording me." Tiffany zoomed in even closer, capturing my face. Oh, is she about to weep? "What will you do now? Imani, you possess all that wealth, yet you have no family, no friends, and nowhere to sleep tonight." She lowered the phone, a vicious, satisfied smirk playing on her lips. "I often wonder," she remarked to Marcus, but audibly enough for me to hear, How much a $38 million prostitute charges for a single evening. God, you'd likely have to pay someone to take you. That was the moment I snapped. The humiliation, the years of invisibility, the sting of my father's near assault, it all coalesced into a searing, white-hot rage I had never before experienced. The fear evaporated, supplanted by a cold, stark clarity. This was it. This was the moment my grandmother had spoken of. It was time to roar. A prostitute, I stated. My voice was low and it did not tremble. It was a voice I scarcely recognized. Tiffany's smirk faltered. She stopped recording. You wish to discuss payment for services, Tiffany? I inquired, taking a step toward her. She instinctively recoiled a step. You wish to discuss finances, Marcus? I turned to my brother, who was no longer laughing. Let us discuss the $100,000 you lost in Las Vegas last weekend, the funds you pilfered from the family trust account, the one Grandpapa Theodore expressly forbade you to touch. Marcus's face turned an ashen white. He looked as if he had been shot. What are you implying? He stammered. I am referring to the wire transfer to the MGM Grand, Marcus, the one you attempted to disguise as a consulting fee. Grandpapa and I observed it. He was profoundly disappointed. You? My mother Monique gasped. You are fabricating. How could you possibly be aware of that? Oh, I am privy to a great many things, Mother, I responded, turning my gaze towards her. I am aware that throughout my entire childhood, you consistently asserted that I was inept with finances, that I was intellectually deficient, and that I could not be entrusted with anything of consequence. I stepped towards my father, who was observing me, his eyes wide with a novel kind of apprehension. And you, Father, I declared, my voice deepening, you stand here posturing as a king. You wish to discuss my inheritance. I emitted a laugh. It was a cold, bitter sound. Let us discuss your liabilities. Let us discuss the $2 million you owe to Sunrust Bank, the loan you secured against your failing enterprise by surreptitiously leveraging Grandpapa's stock portfolio without his authorization, the repayment that is due in 10 days, a repayment for which you have absolutely no means. The silence on the porch was absolute. The only audible sound was a distant car passing several blocks away. David's face was a tableau of pure, unadulterated shock. The fury had vanished, replaced by the terrified expression of a man who had just been exposed. How? He whispered, his voice strained. How did you acquire that knowledge? I have known for 6 months, I stated, the truth feeling potent on my tongue. Grandpapa revealed everything to me. He instructed me on how to interpret your balance sheets. He taught me how to identify the shell corporations. He was aware that you were defrauding him. He knew you were a charlatan. He knew you intended to utilize his entire estate to settle your misdeeds the very instant he was gone. You insignificant reprobate, my father whispered, blood rushing back to his face. You spied on me, you and that doddering fool. He protected his legacy, I declared, from you. That was the breaking point. It was not a slap. It was swifter. He lunged forward, not with an open palm, but with a clenched fist. He seized a massive handful of my hair, yanking my head back with such force that I cried out in pain. You believe you are so exceptionally intelligent? He roared, his face mere inches from mine, spittle flying. You believe you have triumphed? He dragged me, stumbling, off the porch and onto the grass. David, stop! My mother shrieked, but it was a feeble protest. She was evidently terrified of him. He threw me down forcefully onto the lawn. I landed painfully on my shoulder, scraping my hands on the concrete path. You possess nothing, he screamed, standing over me like a deranged individual. Do you comprehend me? You are utterly alone. I reached into my pocket for my phone, my fingers fumbling. Desperate to contact Mr. Jameson, to contact someone, David noticed. He kicked the phone from my hand. It skidded across the pavement. Before I could even cry out, he raised his heavy dress shoe and stomped down upon it. Crunch! He stomped again and again, grinding the screen into a spider web of shattered glass and black plastic. No family, he bellowed. No phone, no one to render assistance to you. He pointed a trembling finger at me, a pathetic broken heap on his immaculate lawn, adjacent to my garbage bag of clothing. You desire your $38 million? Go and procure it. Let us observe how you manage to survive now, you ungrateful, worthless nonentity. Let us observe how your inheritance aids you this very night. He turned, straightened his suit jacket, and re-entered the house. Do not ever return here, he yelled. You are deceased to us. Marcus and Tiffany were no longer in the doorway. My mother stood there for a fleeting moment, her expression a blend of horror and, dare I say, satisfaction. Then she closed the door. The deadbolt clicked into place. I was alone. The sun was beginning its descent. The air grew colder. I was a $38 million heiress, and I was homeless, without a phone and utterly, completely solitary. I sat there on the cold grass for an extended period, the shock rendering me numb. Then I began to tremble. The sobs came forcefully and painfully, but through the tears a memory flickered. My grandmother. Your silence has been your shield. My grandfather, Theodore. You must know how to fight back. And then another memory surfaced. Mr. Jameson in his office. Mere hours ago, he had handed me his card, a substantial linen card. Ms. Washington, he had said, should you require anything. I had stuffed it into the back pocket of my jeans, beneath my cheap suit trousers. My phone was destroyed, but my wallet was in my purse, which was still slung over my shoulder. I wiped my nose, my hands shaking. I regained my footing, my body aching. I gathered my suitcases in the trash bag. I walked away from that house, the only home I had ever known. I walked 2 blocks down the darkened street until I spotted the blue luminescence of a payphone. I retrieved my wallet. My fingers fumbled, searching past my useless debit card. There it was, the thick linen card, Howard Jameson, attorney at law, and his private cell number. I lifted the heavy, grimy receiver, my heart pounding with a newfound rhythm of fear and something else. Hope. I inserted a quarter into the slot and dialed. My fingers were numb, clumsy as I fumbled the quarter into the payphone slot. The heavy, greasy receiver felt cold against my ear. I grasped the phone number from the heavy cardstock, my pulse thrumming a frantic rhythm against my ribs, almost as if it might shatter. It connected after 1, then 2 rings. A clear, businesslike voice responded. Jameson Law Evening Service. I need to speak with Mr. Howard Jameson. I managed, my voice betraying a tremor. Please, it's an urgent matter. My name is Imani Washington. There was a brief pause, then a click, not the sound of being placed on hold, but an immediate rerouting. Imani. Mr. Jameson's deep baritone materialized instantly. He wasn't in his office. This was his private line. Ms. Washington, are you all right? Where are you? That's when the dam broke. The surge of adrenaline and shock ruptured and a raw, guttural cry escaped my throat. They did it, I choked out, pressing myself against the chill metal of the phone enclosure. They cast me out. Mr. Jameson, they tossed all my belongings onto the lawn. My father, he shattered my phone. He physically grabbed me. A sharp intake of breath registered on the other end, followed by a silence so profound it was utterly unnerving. Then his voice emerged, stripped of its usual professional detachment, now imbued with a chilling, hard-edged fury. I foresaw this possibility, he he stated, his tone a low growl. For all our sakes, I had truly hoped your father wasn't quite so monstrous. My assessment was regrettably incorrect. He shifted to a businesslike demeanor. Ami, I need you to concentrate, breathe. Tell me your precise location. What is the nearest street intersection? What do you observe around you? I'm at the public phone on the corner of Elmwood and 4th, I gasped, struggling for air. Across from the 24-hour gas station. Elmwood and 4th, I know that exact vicinity, he confirmed. Do not move, do not speak to anyone, do not depart from that spot. I am departing my residence this instant. I will be at that corner in 5 minutes. Do you comprehend me, Amani? 5 minutes. Remain precisely where you are. The connection severed, I lowered the heavy receiver, my hand trembling so violently I could barely detach my grip. 5 minutes, it felt like an eternity. I stood beneath the flickering bluish glow of the phone booth light, guarding my 2 suitcases and the meager black garbage bag that contained the remnants of my life. Every vehicle that slowed its pace sent a jolt of panic through me, my heart leaping into my throat. I was gripped by the terrifying fear that it might be my father returning to finish what he started, or Marcus coming back to mock me further. Then, precisely as promised, a long, dark silhouette materialized at the intersection. It wasn't a taxi, nor a police cruiser. A pair of brilliant, potent headlights pierced the darkness. A sleek black Bentley sedan, so silent it seemed to glide, eased to a stop directly beside me. The vehicle itself felt like a stark declaration against the life my father had just evicted me from, an embodiment of sheer, unadulterated power. The rear window descended soundlessly. Mr. Jameson was in the back seat, his expression unyielding. "Enter the vehicle, Amani," he commanded. The driver's door swung open and a formidable, impeccably dressed man in a dark suit emerged. He offered no words, merely approached, lifted my 2 worn suitcases, and even handled the black trash bag, with a surprising degree of decorum, placing them in the trunk as if they were high-end luggage. I opened the substantial rear door and sank into the most luxurious leather I had ever encountered. The interior of the car was warm, perfumed with the rich scent of leather and wood polish. It exuded an aura of security. Mr. Jameson remained silent initially. He reached into a discreet console refrigerator and produced a chilled bottle of water, offering it to me. "Drink," he instructed. "Your father has committed the gravest error of his existence." The car smoothly departed the curb, the payphone and gas station receding behind us. Where are we headed?" I whispered. "A hotel." Mr. Jameson turned to me. Streetlights momentarily illuminated his features, revealing a subtle, almost imperceptible grimace. "No, Ms. Washington, we are not proceeding to a hotel. Your grandparents were individuals of remarkable intellect, possessing a keen sense of practicality. They understood David's character implicitly. They were aware of your family's capacity for certain actions." He paused, allowing his words to resonate as the vehicle accelerated, heading towards the city's most affluent district. "They bequeathed you more than just financial assets, Amani. They provided you with a sanctuary. They gifted you," he emphasized, "a bastion." We glided through the thoroughfares of Atlanta, the urban lights a mere blur beyond the heavily tinted windows. The silence within the Bentley was absolute, a profound and comforting solace. A world away from the cold pavement I had occupied mere minutes prior. My shoulder throbbed where I had fallen, and my scalp still stung from where my father had wrenched my hair. "Mr. Jameson," I murmured, my voice barely audible. I have nowhere to go. My bank accounts are all linked to my father's primary account, designated as youth accounts. He will freeze them. He's already destroyed my phone. I possess nothing." "You possess $38 million, Ms. Washington." he stated, his voice steady and reassuring. However, that is a concern for a subsequent time. Tonight, your priority is sanctuary. A hotel? I inquired. No, he replied succinctly. The Bentley bypassed the downtown hotel cluster, veering north into the serene, tree-lined avenues of Buckhead. This was the domain of established wealth, where venerable oak trees formed a verdant canopy overhead. We passed palatial estates, set back hundreds of feet from the road behind imposing gates. I recognized this route with absolute clarity. This is, I began, my heart suddenly accelerating for an entirely different reason. This is the path to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Indeed it is, he confirmed. A chilling apprehension washed over me. But we cannot. My father, he believes he controls the estate. He'll have the security codes. He'll simply contact the authorities and declare me a trespasser. He'll expel me all over again. The car decelerated not at the grand entrance gates, but at a more discreet service access point I had utilized countless times. Mr. Jameson turned to me in the dim interior light. Imani, he articulated with precision, your father presumes dominion over the estate. He regards this property as part of the Washington Family Trust, which he was appointed to administer. In this, as in most matters, he is profoundly mistaken. My thoughts raced to comprehend his meaning. What do you mean? Your grandparents were exceptionally astute. They were also remarkably pragmatic. They grasped David's nature perfectly. They understood his avarice. They recognized his desperation. He paused. And they were aware of his financial precipitousness. They knew about the $2 million loan. My head snapped up. You were privy to that as well. I am their legal representative. I possessed complete knowledge. 6 months ago, he continued, when your grandfather first ascertained that David had falsified his signature to secure that loan, he contacted me. He understood his health was declining. He believed I was also... He hesitated. He stated, Howard, I must safeguard my true inheritance, and his genuine legacy, Imani, was you. Mr. Jameson reached for a polished briefcase at his feet, withdrawing a substantial leather-bound folder. Without opening it, he placed it directly into my lap. That, he declared, is a quitclaim deed. 6 months ago, your grandparents legally and officially transferred 100% ownership of this property, the residence, the grounds, and all its contents, directly to your name. It was duly signed, notarized, and recorded with the state of Georgia. He tapped the folder. It was never incorporated into the will. It was never part of the trust. It has unequivocally and irrevocably been yours for the past half year. I gazed down at the folder, my name emblazoned upon it. Washington, owner. They knew, I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. They knew he would do this. They were aware. Mr. Jameson affirmed, his voice as unyielding as steel. And they laid a meticulously crafted trap. A trap? Your father has no knowledge of this deed's existence. He is operating under the erroneous assumption that this house is his to liquidate. In fact, Mr. Jameson consulted his elegant gold wristwatch. My office confirmed this very afternoon. Your father has already initiated contact with a high-caliber real estate agent. He has an appointment scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to have this property appraised for immediate sale. His intention is to utilize the proceeds to settle his illicit $2 million bank debt before facing charges for fraud. A chill permeated my very being. He wasn't merely expelling me. He intended to sell my grandparents' home, my home, to cover his own transgressions. Mr. Jameson presented me with a small, weighty velvet box. These are yours. I opened it. Nestled within on a bed of black satin lay the 2 original ornate skeleton keys to the house, along with a single, new high-security key fob. The driver, who had remained conspicuously silent throughout, opened my door. Mr. Jameson guided me to a less conspicuous side gate. He entered a code, and the gate swung open with silent efficiency. We proceeded up the familiar stone pathway to a side entrance, the one leading directly into my grandfather's study. Proceed, he instructed. My hand quivered as I inserted the antique heavy brass key into the lock. It turned with an almost buttery smoothness. The door clicked open. I stepped across the threshold, and an overwhelming sense of relief flooded me. The air itself felt different, imbued with the comforting aromas of aged books, beeswax furniture polish, and the subtle, lingering fragrance of my grandmother's rose perfume that seemed perpetually woven into the very fabric of the curtains. It smelled of security. It smelled of every cherished weekend from my childhood. It smelled of profound love. This was the very room where my grandfather had patiently taught me to decipher stock market reports. This was the kitchen just down the corridor, where my grandmother had allowed me to make a glorious mess baking pies. This was, without question, the only place in the entire world where I had never, not even once, felt like a burden. I leaned my forehead against the cool, dark wood of the doorframe, finally allowing myself to weep. Not the hot, stinging tears of humiliation shed on my father's lawn, but deep, shuddering sobs of sheer, aching relief. They saved me, I whispered. They are gone, but they still saved me. They did, Mr. Jameson affirmed, his hand resting gently on my shoulder, and they ensured your continued preservation. Precisely as he spoke, I heard the faint crunch of gravel on the main driveway. Headlights swept across the front windows. My body stiffened, my fear surged anew. Who is that? Is it him? Did he follow us? It is not him, Mr. Jameson stated calmly. He is not an invited guest. This arrival is for your benefit. I peered through the ornate curtains of the grand foyer. A substantial black SUV, emblazoned with the insignia Apex Strategic Security, had silently approached the front steps. Two individuals in professional black uniforms disembarked. They were met by Mr. Jameson's driver, who, astonishingly, was now transporting my scuffed suitcases and the black trash bag from the trunk. That, Mr. Jameson explained, is the private security detail your grandfather engaged 6 months ago. They have been on standby, awaiting this moment. They are authorized to patrol the main gate and the rear entrance 24 hours a day. They possess a meticulously compiled list of individuals strictly prohibited from entering this property. Your father, your mother, your brother, and your sister-in-law are at the very apex of that list. He met my gaze, his expression serious, yet with a distinct flicker of pride in his eyes. You are now secure, Imani. This is your fortress. Let them come. Mr. Jameson's driver carried my scuffed luggage and the solitary, pathetic black trash bag into the opulent foyer. They appeared comically out of place, akin to discarded refuse in a grand museum. The Apex security guards, two imposing, serious men, had already assumed their positions at the main gate. Mr. Jameson turned to me. The intense, protective anger that had previously colored his expression now softened into a professional calm. You should endeavor to obtain some rest, Ms. Washington, he advised. Proceed to your former room. I trust it remains precisely as you left it. I clutched the leather folder containing the deed to my chest. I cannot rest, I whispered, the residual adrenaline still causing my body to tremble. He is still out there. They will not simply relinquish this. You heard my father. They are enraged. Mr. Jameson concurred, his voice hardening once more. And they are profoundly misguided. But most significantly, Immy, they are desperate. Your father is not merely an irate individual. He is a cornered animal. That $2 million loan I mentioned, the one he procured illicitly utilizing your grandfather's assets, the bank is now demanding repayment. He has 10 days. My blood ran cold. So, he requires this house. He needs to liquidate this house. Precisely, Mr. Jameson corrected. He genuinely believes he can enter these premises, expel you, sell this mansion for a swift $10 million, and thereby resolve his legal predicaments. He has an appointment tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m. with the premier real estate broker in Atlanta. He cannot, I gasped, surveying the elegant, secure hallway. He cannot simply sell it, can he? Legally? Absolutely not. This residence is yours, unencumbered, he stated, tapping the folder I held. However, desperate individuals disregard legalities. Their focus is on leverage. He will appear tomorrow. He will instigate a disturbance. He will attempt to publicly humiliate you. He will likely summon the police and assert that you are the one trespassing. My stomach plummeted. What am I going to do? You, Mr. Jameson declared, are going to remain within your fortress. You will not respond at the gate. The security team will manage any interaction with law enforcement. They possess duplicate copies of the deed and my professional credentials. And I, he offered a thin, grim smile, will be present at 8:45 a.m. sharp, and I shall not be unaccompanied. You will not confront them, Amani. You will observe them. He inclined his head slightly. Obtain some sleep. They have initiated a conflict they are incapable of winning. Tomorrow we shall demonstrate precisely why. He departed. The heavy front door swung shut with the satisfying finality of a bank vault, locking mechanism. The profound silence of the immense house enveloped me. This was not the sterile silence of my father's residence. This was a warm, protective stillness. My feet seemed to move of their own accord as I walked past the grand staircase, down the corridor, and towards my grandfather's library. I pushed open the imposing oak doors. The room was precisely as I remembered it. The air was redolent of aged tomes, polished leather, and the faint, sweet essence of my grandfather's pipe tobacco. I ran my fingers along the spines of his legal volumes, settling into his substantial, well-worn leather chair behind the desk. My gaze fell upon it. Placed precisely in the center of the dark, polished wood was a single, thick, cream-colored envelope. It was free of dust, indicating it had been placed there recently. My name, Imani, was inscribed on the front in my grandmother's exquisite, elegant calligraphy. My hands trembled as I lifted it and broke the wax seal. Inside, a folded letter awaited. My dearest Amani, I read aloud, my voice echoing in the hushed chamber. If you are reading this, my love, then we are no longer among the living. Do not allow your sorrow for us to eclipse your inherent strength. Your grandfather and I have experienced a long and fulfilling existence. Our sole regret is our inability to mend the affliction within our son, David. Tears blurred the words. I wiped them away. We have observed you throughout your entire life. We recognized your quiet fortitude. We perceived the brilliance they sought to extinguish. We understood long ago that you were the sole individual capable of comprehending our true legacy, the legacy of integrity, not mere material wealth. Your grandfather, Theodore, was a brilliant entrepreneur. He has bequeathed you $38 million. Consider this your shield. It will offer you protection. But wealth, Amani, is merely an instrument. It is conspicuous and often lacks subtlety. What I am entrusting to you is something far more potent. I am bestowing upon you the truth. Your father and your brother have strayed significantly from their path. Their avarice and envy have rendered them reckless. They believe themselves to be the most astute individuals in Atlanta. They are convinced they can outmaneuver a senile old man and a quiet, unassuming girl. They are gravely mistaken. Your genuine inheritance, my cherished one, your ultimate weapon, resides in a location your grandfather deemed most logical and which I considered most poetic. Utilize it. Do not succumb to fear. Do not permit them to subjugate you for even another second. Your entire existence you have remained silent. Now, my sweet child, it is time to unleash your roar. We love you eternally, Grandma Ilara. My heart was pounding, contemplating this logical and poetic place. I scanned the library. My eyes settled on the imposing built-in bookshelf, and there it was. Tucked discreetly between my grandfather's editions of The Wealth of Nations and The Intelligent Investor was a single expertly hollowed out faux book labeled Logical. Behind it, seamlessly integrated into the wall, was a small black digital safe. Poetic, the combination. My mind raced their anniversary, my birthday, Nome. I recalled the date, the very date my father had violently torn up my Spelman scholarship notification. The date my grandparents had covertly covered my initial tuition fees. I entered the numerals 08142017. The safe emitted a soft click. A small green light illuminated. I pulled open the heavy steel door. There was no currency, no precious gemstones, only a plain black accountant's ledger, and resting atop it, a single black USB flash drive. I carefully extracted the ledger. Opening it, I found the initial page inscribed with my grandfather's neat, precise handwriting. It was a detailed log, recording dates, monetary amounts, and transfers. August 10th, $50,000 to Marcus. The stated reason was business investment. The actual reason concealed MGM Grand gambling markers. September 2nd, $100,000 to Marcus. Reason provided seed capital. Actual reason covered Bellagio gambling markers. My stomach churned sickeningly. Page after page revealed Marcus's systematic siphoning of over $500,000 from them. Then I turned to my father's section. It was even more egregious, far, far worse. It contained photocopies of the $2 million loan agreement, facsimiles of the forged signature, and printouts from offshore shell company bank statements. My grandfather had meticulously documented every illicit detail. He had meticulously constructed an irrefutable case of felony bank fraud. I picked up the USB drive. This was R's contribution. I glanced at the clock. It was nearing midnight. At 9 o'clock in the morning, they were scheduled to arrive. They would be here to shout, to threaten, to summon the authorities, and to attempt to utterly humiliate me in front of the neighbors. I held the ledger in one hand and the USB drive in the other. They were completely unaware. They believed they were coming to confront a frightened, homeless girl. I smiled. They were profoundly mistaken. They were marching directly into their own demise. I slept in my former bedroom, the one adorned with pale yellow walls, and the expansive bay window where my grandmother used to read to me. I slept for a solid 10 hours, a deep, dreamless, and utterly secure slumber. Upon waking, it was 8:30 a.m. I indulged in a hot shower in my grandmother's bathroom, complete with its steam shower and heated marble flooring. I donned a set of her impeccably clean silk pajamas. Descending to the kitchen, I prepared myself a cup of my grandfather's exquisite Jamaican blue mountain coffee and settled at the security console situated in the library. I observed the high-definition feed from the cameras positioned at the main gate. At precisely 8:59 a.m., they arrived. It wasn't a single vehicle, but two. First, my father's black Mercedes sedan, gleaming with an almost offensive self-importance. Following closely was a white, windowless van bearing the prominent lettering A1 Lock and Key. My father, David, emerged first. He was attired in a crisp blue suit, projecting the image of the powerful CEO he so desperately pretended to be. My mother, Monique, exited from the passenger side, her expression fixed in a triumphant sneer. Marcus and Tiffany tumbled out from the rear, Tiffany already brandishing her phone as if documenting a celebrity encounter. Two imposing, robust men in matching work attire disembarked from the van. They were carrying substantial toolboxes and a long, thick metal bar that bore a striking resemblance to an oversized crowbar. My family assembled to wage war. David strode towards the intercom, his entourage trailing behind him. He depressed the buzzer. The sound echoed faintly in the quiet library. I calmly sipped my coffee. He pressed it again, this time holding his thumb firmly against the button. He glanced up at the imposing structure of the house, his brow furrowing in impatience. With a curt nod to the locksmiths, he turned and gestured, "Proceed." The two men advanced towards the magnificent, ornate iron gate. One of them commenced an examination of the high-security locking mechanism. "I'm not certain, boss," one of them called back to my father. "This appears to be a custom installation, quite sophisticated. It's not a straightforward lock." David's countenance darkened with evident frustration. This was my cue. I picked up my coffee mug, walked through the library into the grand foyer, and ascended the wide, sweeping staircase. At the summit, I proceeded to the pair of double doors opening onto the expansive, stone-covered second-floor balcony. It offered a perfect vantage point directly above the main entrance and ideal stage. I pushed the doors open and stepped out into the crisp morning air. I looked down at them, all five of them, like a sovereign surveying a collection of disgruntled, bewildered subjects. Monique spotted me first. Her mouth fell open. Her face, which had been set in an expression of smug victory, contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. "You!" she shrieked, her voice fracturing and echoing through the hushed, affluent enclave. "What are you doing on my property? Get out of my residence!" My father, Marcus, and Tiffany all snapped their heads up. Their faces, arrayed in a line, painted a perfect picture of shock and fury. David recovered first. He thrust a thick, enraged finger in my direction. "She's trespassing," he bellowed. "Not to me, but to these professionals. That young woman is my daughter. She is mentally unsound and has been disinherited. She forced her way onto my land." He gestured dismissively towards the gate. "Don't just stand there. I'm the proprietor. I'm retaining your services to open this gate. Breach it if necessary. I'll compensate you twice the usual rate." The locksmiths exchanged glances, then looked at me and then back at my father. They appeared profoundly uneasy. The fellow with the crowbar shifted his stance. "That's right," Tiffany shrieked, her phone pointed directly at my face, her hand trembling with exhilaration. "We're broadcasting this live, you lunatic. Everyone's going to witness this. We're documenting you, the ungrateful, deranged heiress who's breaking into her deceased grandparents' dwelling. You are finished, Amani." She angled the camera towards her own face momentarily. "Everyone, my sister-in-law is experiencing a complete mental collapse. She's a danger." Marcus stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Game over, Amani. Did you truly believe you could triumph? You're merely a dim-witted girl who stumbled into luck. We're having you apprehended. You're headed for incarceration and then a psychiatric facility. And we," he gestured towards his father, "will finally assume stewardship of the funds as originally intended." The locksmiths appeared even more apprehensive. "Sir," one of them addressed my father, "if she's inside the premises, this constitutes a domestic disagreement. We cannot simply proceed with forceful entry." David roared, his complexion turning a dark, mottled crimson. "I'm paying you to perform your duties or I'll sue your enterprise into oblivion." The two men exchanged a look. One of them exhaled and they both turned back to the gate. The man with the crowbar positioned it against the lock. I remained motionless, I observed them. I offered no commentary. I took another slow, composed sip of my steaming coffee. They appeared so insignificant from my vantage point. The man with the crowbar finalized its placement. The metal grated against the iron. I lowered my coffee vessel. My voice, cutting through the cool morning atmosphere, was surprisingly resonant. It carried. "I believe you should cease," I stated. The man with the crowbar paused. My father, David, let out a harsh bark of laughter. It was a dreadful, discordant sound. "You think," he taunted, "you presume to halt us? You, a pathetic woman in a bathrobe?" He spread his arms wide in a gesture of utter arrogance. "Who will stop me? Imani, you, and who else?" Precisely on cue, the heavy library door behind me clicked open. A deep, authoritative voice sliced through the air, a voice imbued with power and an icy, unyielding command. "I believe I will, David." I did not turn. I had anticipated his arrival. Mr. Howard Jameson emerged onto the balcony, stopping directly beside me. He was the antithesis of my father. David was ostentatious. His attire was flashy, his anger was hot and undisciplined. Mr. Jameson embodied quiet, formidable strength. He was clad in a flawless charcoal grey three-piece suit. He held a slender, polished leather attaché case in one hand. He was tall, imposing, and he regarded my father with an expression of complete and utter contempt. The reaction from below was immediate. It was everything I had hoped for. Their countenances froze in astonishment. My father's mouth, which had been open in a mocking laugh, snapped shut. The colour drained from his face, leaving his skin a pallid, sickly grey. "Howard," he whispered. His voice was no longer a bellow, it was the faint squeak of a mouse. What are you doing here?" My mother, Monique, emitted a small, choked gasp, her hand flying to her pearl necklace. "Mr. Jameson." Tiffany stopped recording. Her phone wavered in her grip as she stared, her jaw agape. The venomous, mocking smirk had vanished, replaced by a mask of sheer, uncomprehending bewilderment. My brother, Marcus, simply stammered, pointing a trembling finger. "Who? Who on earth? What is he doing here?" Mr. Jameson disregarded them entirely. His gaze descended, finding my father. "David," he said, and though his voice wasn't a shout, it reached every corner of the estate. "I am present in my capacity as legal counsel for my client, Ms. Imani Washington." My father flinched but attempted to regain his composure, puffing out his chest. "Your client? She is my daughter. She is mentally unstable. She is trespassing. This is my residence. It is part of the Washington Family Trust. I am the executor of that trust, and I am ordering her to leave." Mr. Jameson simply regarded him. He allowed the frantic, pathetic words to hang in the air for a long, humiliating moment. Then he spoke. "You are mistaken, David, on all counts, but most especially," he declared, regarding the residence. He placed his briefcase on the stone balustrade and clicked it open. "The family trust," he stated, his voice dripping with condescension, "is irrelevant because this residence is not within it." He produced a thick, legal-sized document, stapled and ribboned by the state of Georgia. "This," he announced, holding it aloft for them to see the blue seals, "is a fully executed, notarized, and recorded quitclaim deed." He let his gaze sweep from David to Monique to Marcus. 6 months ago, prior to their tragic accident, Theodore and Alla Washington, being of sound mind and body, legally transferred 100% unencumbered ownership of this property, this residence, this land, and all its contents directly to Ms. Imani. He rotated the document so my father could read the header. "She," Mr. Jameson announced, his voice escalating, "is the sole legal and undisputed owner of this property. It has borne her name on the title for half a year." He folded the document, his movements slow and deliberate. Which means, he continued, his eyes narrowing into two icy slits as he pointed his finger at my father, that you are trespassing. The word struck my father like a physical blow. He staggered back a step, his fists clenched at his sides. No, that's a fabrication. The old man was senile. He wouldn't. He did, Mr. Jameson interjected, cutting him off. And now I wish for you to direct your attention to the two gentlemen you have engaged. My father's head snapped towards the locksmiths. The two men had frozen completely, the crowbar still wedged in the gate. Mr. Jameson's voice dropped to a level that was even more unnerving. It was pure legal ice. Gentlemen, he stated, you are currently being recorded by no fewer than 12 high-definition security cameras. You are at this moment attempting to abet criminal trespass, property damage, and the attempted breaking and entering of a private dwelling. My associate has already documented your license plate, your company name, and your visages. He leaned forward slightly. I am Howard Jameson, senior partner at Jameson, Finch and Lyle. If you do not relinquish that implement, enter your vehicle, and depart this property within the next 10 seconds, I will personally ensure your arrest for conspiracy, and I will have your business license revoked by midday. The reaction was immediate. The burly man dropped the crowbar as if it were a flame. It struck the pavement with a loud metallic clang that reverberated in the stunned silence. We didn't know, sir, one of them stammered, raising his hands. He claimed it was his residence. He said she was a problem. We're leaving. We're departing immediately, the other affirmed. They didn't even bother to retrieve their expensive tool. They turned, scrambled back to their van, threw themselves inside and slammed the doors. The engine roared to life. The van squealed in reverse, executed a 3-point turn with such speed it nearly clipped my father's Mercedes, and sped away down the quiet street, its tires smoking. They abandoned the crowbar on the ground, a pathetic, useless piece of metal. Mr. Jameson straightened his tie. He glanced down at my family, who was still standing there, utterly and completely defeated. Now, he stated, referring to your appointment with the real estate agent. Just as the locksmith's van disappeared, another set of lights flashed at the far end of the long, tree-lined avenue. 2 Atlanta Police Department cruisers, their blue lights revolving silently, pulled up and parked directly behind my father's Mercedes, effectively boxing him in. The neighbors were undoubtedly observing now. I noticed a curtain twitch in the residence across the street. An elderly gentleman in a golf shirt paused his morning stroll, staring openly. This was Buckhead. Public domestic disturbances were not commonplace. This was the ultimate degradation. 2 officers disembarked, their hands resting on their belts. Mr. Jameson, still on the balcony, simply raised a hand. "Good morning, officers," he called out, his voice perfectly amiable. "Thank you for your prompt response. I believe the trespassers were just departing." "Trespassers?" one of the officers responded, glancing at my father. My mother, Monique, appeared as though she were about to be physically ill. Her hand was at her throat, her face ashen. This was her worst apprehension, being perceived as common or criminal in this neighborhood. Tiffany had finally put her phone away. Her face was a mask of horrified disbelief. My father, David, stood trembling. He was trapped. The police were behind him. His legal representative was in front of him, and I was above him, wielding all the power. He had lost, and he had lost publicly. He looked up at me, his expression a grotesque melange of crimson rage and absolute powerlessness. He couldn't scream, he couldn't strike, he couldn't issue commands. All his instruments were gone, so he simply pointed. His finger trembled violently in the air, aimed directly at me. "You," he hissed, his voice a low, venomous whisper that barely carried. "Think you're clever. You think you've won. You are not done with me. This is not over, Imani. You will pay for this." It was a pathetic, hollow threat from a vanquished man. I gazed down at him, at this man who had tormented me my entire existence. I felt nothing, no fear, no pity, merely in conclusion. I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on the cool stone railing. "Oh, I know it's not over, Father," I stated, and my cold, clear voice carried across the lawn. "I haven't even begun yet." A shiver coursed through him. He had no inkling of what that implied, but he knew it was true. The police officer took a step towards him. "Sir, is there a problem here? We were informed you were attempting to forcibly enter a property that is not yours." That was the final insult. David emitted a strangled, animalistic sound of pure exasperation. He spun around, tugging at his suit jacket, and stormed back towards his Mercedes. "Monique, Marcus, get in the car now." My family didn't walk. They scrambled, they tripped over themselves to get into the vehicle, their heads bowed in shame. My father peeled out of the driveway, humiliated, defeated, with 2 police cars observing his departure. The street fell silent once more. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Mr. Jameson turned to me, a look of profound satisfaction on his features. He closed his briefcase. "That," he remarked, "was part 1. He turned and glanced back into the library where I had left the black ledger and the USB drive resting on my grandfather's desk. "Now," Mr. Jameson stated, a grim smile touching his lips, "it's time to deploy grandmother's secret weapon." We returned inside. The heavy doors swung shut, sealing us off from the outside world. The police cars departed. The quiet, chagrined street resumed its peaceful demeanor. I was still trembling, but it was a different kind of tremor now. It was the vibration of power. "He called me a pathetic girl in a bathrobe," I murmured, looking down at my grandmother's silk pajamas. "You are," Mr. Jameson affirmed, walking past me into the library. "The most formidable individual he has ever encountered. He simply isn't aware of the full extent of it yet." I followed him into my grandfather's study. The room felt like a command center. I settled into the large leather chair behind the desk. It felt as though it finally belonged to me. Mr. Jameson stood before the desk. "All business," he declared. "What he just experienced," he continued, "was humiliation. What follows is annihilation. Your grandparents, Imani, were meticulous. Part 1 was the defense, the residence, in securing your safety." He tapped the black ledger and the USB drive that I had placed on the desk. "This," he stated, "is the offensive weapon. Now let us review the terms of their capitulation." I opened the black ledger. My grandfather's impeccable, precise handwriting filled the pages. It was more than just a tabulation of figures. It was a narrative, a story of treachery. Mr. Jameson guided me through it, though I had already scrutinized it the entire night. "Part 1, your brother Marcus," he stated. He pointed to the initial section. "Your grandparents, as you are aware, provided him with initial capital for his entrepreneurial endeavors. What they discovered was that his sole investment was in the MGM Grand's poker room." I examined the entries. August 10th, $50,000. Stated reason, supply chain investment. Actual reason, covering markers at the Bellagio. September 2nd, $100,000. Stated reason, new website development. Actual reason, settling a debt with an offshore bookie. Page after page he had bled them dry, siphoning over $500,000 in less than 2 years. "Marcus is a thief and a gambling addict," I whispered. It felt peculiar to vocalize it. He is a fool, Mr. Jameson corrected. A greedy, foolish boy. Your father is a different entity entirely. He is a predator. He turned the page to the subsequent section. Part 2. Your father, David. My grandfather had not merely jotted down notes. He had affixed supporting documentation. As you informed him on the lawn, Mr. Jameson stated, your father's enterprise is faltering. It is $2 million in debt. What you neglected to tell him is that we are aware of how he secured that loan. He indicated a document. It was a loan agreement from Sunrust Bank, and at the bottom a signature, Theodore Washington. That, Mr. Jameson declared, is a forgery, and a rather crude one at that. David falsified your grandfather's signature illegally, pledging your grandfather's private stock portfolio as collateral for his own failing business. My stomach turned to ice. So when the bank, Mr. Jameson finished, his voice heavy, calls in that loan in 10 days. When David defaults, which he will, the bank will not only seize his company, they will initiate a federal inquiry into the collateral. They will uncover the forgery. He is not merely facing bankruptcy, Amani. He is facing 20 years in federal prison for bank fraud and aggravated identity theft. It all coalesced. That's why, Mr. Jameson stated, his voice laden, he was so desperate for the $38 million. It was never about the Gwagan. It was never about expanding the family enterprise. It was about survival. He intended to utilize your inheritance to repay his illicit $2 million loan before the 10-day deadline, thereby concealing his crime entirely. He was going to steal from his daughter to cover up the fact that he had stolen from his father. He looked at me, his eyes reflecting a cold, hard anger. He wasn't simply attempting to seize your fortune, Amani. He was attempting to use you as a get-out-of-jail-free card. He would have drained that $38 million dry and left you with nothing, just as he did to his own parents. I felt a wave of nausea. I looked at the black ledger, this compendium of my family's transgressions. The ledger is the evidence, I stated. It's the proof. The ledger, Mr. Jameson concurred, is the bludgeon. Your grandmother, she bequeathed you the nail. He picked up the small black USB flash drive. Your grandfather was methodical. He collected documents. Your grandmother was artistic. She collected moments. She harbored suspicions regarding David's weekly business consultations with Marcus. So she did what any astute woman would. She installed a high-end voice-activated recorder in the ventilation shaft of this very office. This is what she uncovered. He clicked on the initial file, dated merely 2 weeks prior to the fatal automobile accident. A voice filled the room. It was my brother, Marcus. I'm telling you, Dad, I need another $50,000 or they're going to break my legs. Then my father's voice, cold and wrathful. You fool, do you believe I'm made of money? The old man is monitoring the accounts like a hawk. He and that Amani. My breath hitched. We just need to hold on, my father's voice continued. The loan is due on the 14th. The old man, his heart is frail. Ara is weak. It's only a matter of time. As soon as they're gone, as soon as they're finally gone, all that money comes to us. The $38 million. I'll settle the bank's debt. You pay off your bookies. And that useless girl, Amani, she'll receive nothing. She'll be on the streets where she belongs. Now, let's practice the signatures again. Mr. Jameson terminated the recording. I was speechless. They hadn't merely been pilfering. They had been anticipating, waiting for them to perish. Plotting to expel me the instant they were gone, I looked at Mr. Jameson. The queasy, weak sensation had subsided. It was replaced by a cold, resolute determination. They didn't merely walk into a trap, I stated. They constructed it themselves. The recording ceased. The heavy, suffocating silence of the library returned, feeling 1,000 times more toxic than before. They had been waiting. They had been waiting for my grandparents to die, growing impatient that it was taking too long, plotting to cast me out and seize everything, all while my grandmother was fading away in a hospital bed. A profound coldness enveloped me, so deep it burned. "Mr. Jameson," I said, addressing a man I had only perceived as the embodiment of composure. He was pale with a rage that made his hands tremble. He snapped the laptop shut. "That," he stated, his voice a low, dangerous growl, "is conspiracy to commit fraud, and that is where I draw the line." He withdrew his smartphone from his breast pocket, his movements sharp and incensed. "I am contacting the district attorney. I possess his private number. With this audio recording and that ledger, David and Marcus will be apprehended before 5 o'clock this afternoon." His thumb hovered over the contact. "No," I countered. My voice was quiet, but it halted him abruptly. He looked up, his face a mask of bewilderment. "Miss Washington, Amani, did you not just hear what I heard? These men, your father and brother, they conspired to this. This is not a family dispute. This is a criminal enterprise." "I heard precisely what I heard," I affirmed. I rose from my grandfather's desk, the black ledger in my hand. "And I know my family. If we contact the police this very moment, do you comprehend the repercussions? My father will claim he was set up. My mother, Monique, will launch a campaign. She will inform every neighbor, every aunt, every uncle that her unfortunate, troubled, avaricious daughter falsified documents and manufactured evidence to abscond with the family fortune." I walked towards the window, gazing out at the secure, picturesque lawn. "They will tarnish my grandparents' names. They will fabricate. They will weep. They will assume the mantle of victimhood, and they are exceptionally adept at playing the victim. No, I will not permit them to distort this narrative. I will not allow them to cast me as the antagonist in their story." I turned back to him, the USB drive feeling heavy in my palm. "I do not wish for them to be apprehended by the police. Not yet. I want them to comprehend." Mr. Jameson was listening intently, his eyes sharp, the phone still clutched in his hand. "Comprehend what, madam?" "I want them to understand who defeated them. I wish to witness the expression on their faces when they realize that the dim-witted, quiet young woman they planned to cast out onto the streets is the one holding the evidence that will consign them both to imprisonment." A slow, menacing comprehension dawned on Mr. Jameson's features. "What are you proposing?" "My father is a bully," I stated. "He is humiliated, but at this moment he is also terrified. He is a cornered animal. He still believes he can negotiate with me. He still presumes he can intimidate or coerce me into relinquishing a portion of the $38 million to resolve his $2 million fraud predicament." I picked up the heavy telephone on my grandfather's desk. "So, let us grant him the meeting he so desperately desires." "Here?" Mr. Jameson inquired. "I shall have the security team escort him." "No," I countered, cutting him off. "Not here. This is my stronghold. This is my sanctuary. I intend to confront him on his own turf. I want to stand in his shabby, failing business office, the one on the brink of being repossessed by the bank. I want him to sit in his cheap, rented chair behind his imitation wood desk, feeling that surge of authority right up until the precise moment I strip it all away." Mr. Jameson's faint smile reappeared. It was the look of a predator, a corporate execution, a family's come-uppance. I corrected myself. "Refer to him as Mr. Jameson. Inform him that his unappreciated daughter is prepared to negotiate terms." The consulting office in Washington was precisely as I recalled it, concealed within a dreary strip mall in Sandy Springs, wedged between a dry cleaner and a struggling pizza parlor. The air inside was stagnant, carrying the scent of cheap coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. It was an undignified setting for a man posturing as royalty. They were all present, assembled like a royal court. My father, David, occupied his seat behind his imposing fake wood desk, leaning back in his groaning chair, attempting an air of power. My mother, Monique, sat in a chair against the wall, buffing her nails, exuding an aura of smug disinterest. On the inexpensive vinyl sofa, my brother Marcus and his wife Tiffany were engaged in hushed conversation. They both sneered as I entered. They had regrouped. They had convinced themselves that my triumph at the entrance was merely a fleeting, childish outburst. They genuinely believed I had arrived, defeated and apprehensive, ready to capitulate. Mr. Jameson remained by the doorway, a silent, watchful presence. "Well, well," David declared, spreading his arms wide with a grin on his face. "Look who's finally seen reason. Took you long enough, Amani. Did you enjoy playing Queen of the Castle all by yourself for one night?" Monique chimed in, her voice laced with feigned saccharine concern. "It must be dreadfully lonely in that vast old house, isn't it, sweetie? All that responsibility. You see, we were correct. You require your family." "I'm relieved you're finally prepared to be sensible," David continued, steepling his fingers. "That spectacle this morning was amusing. It was highly dramatic, but ultimately childish. You've made your little point. Now it's time for the adults to intervene and manage the substantial assets, the actual enterprise." He leaned forward, his expression a facade of manufactured generosity. "So here is my final magnanimous offer. We'll designate it a family reconciliation payment. You'll sign the asset management agreements. You'll transfer $38 million into the family trust. Naturally, I will oversee it competently." He paused for dramatic emphasis. "And as a demonstration of my goodwill, will permit you to retain $10 million entirely yours, free and clear. And the residents, of course, you may continue to live there. This is an exceedingly advantageous arrangement. Frankly, it's more than you warrant, considering the mortification you subjected us to earlier today." $10 million, Tiffany whispered to Marcus, her eyes wide with avaricious excitement. "Wow, he's being so generous to her." I remained still. I observed David's deceptive countenance. I noted Monique's callous indifference. I perceived Tiffany's vapid cupidity. I uttered no word. I advanced, my heels clicking on the cheap, warped laminate flooring. I carried the new leather attaché case that Mr. Jameson had procured for me that morning. My father watched me, his smug grin unwavering, assuming I was about to present the documents he demanded. I reached the desk. I met his gaze directly. I opened the attaché case. Instead of papers, I withdrew the weighty black accountant's ledger. I placed it on his desk. It settled with a firm, substantial, conclusive thud. The sound resonated too loudly in the inexpensive, silent office. David's smile faltered. "What is this?" he inquired. "Your art school journal? More of your childish diversions?" Monique scoffed. Then I reached back into the attaché case. I retrieved the small black USB flash drive. I positioned it directly beside the ledger. A brief, sharp click. My father and mother merely exchanged confused, bewildered glances. But Marcus was fixated on the ledger. His face had become rigid. He recognized that book. He had seen that book. He had observed our grandfather meticulously writing in it in the library, immediately after Marcus had been compelled to beg, weeping for funds to cover his gambling debts. He understood precisely what it represented. The color leached from his face. The arrogant smirk evaporated, supplanted by a sickly, pale, clammy terror. "Where?" he stammered, his voice suddenly a high-pitched squeak. Where did you obtain that?" "What?" David inquired irritably. "What is it, Marcus?" "It's merely an old book." I finally spoke. My voice was frigid and distinct, slicing through the stale atmosphere. He recognizes it, I stated. Don't you, Marcus? You recognize Grandpapa's genuine accounts. He recognizes it, I repeated, my voice like ice. Because he was present when Grandpapa recorded it. Weren't you, Marcus, right after you came begging for $50,000 to settle your debt with your bookie? Marcus began to hyperventilate. No, I don't know what you're referring to. Oh, I believe you do, I replied. I reached into my attaché case one final time. I withdrew a small, sleek, black portable speaker. I placed it on the desk, precisely between the ledger and the USB drive. David stared at the speaker, utterly perplexed. What is this? He demanded. More playthings? Are you going to perform a song for us, Imani? This is preposterous. I presented you with a generous $10 million proposal. Now, you will sign the documents or we are concluded here. You are correct, Father, I affirmed. I'm going to play you a song, a brief recording. Grandmama used to call it the truth. I connected the USB drive to the speaker. I depressed the power button. A small blue indicator illuminated, and I initiated playback. The stale, cheap air of the office was suddenly permeated by the crystal clear, recorded voices of my father and my brother. It was the recording from my grandfather's study. Marcus's voice, I'm telling you, Dad, I require another $50,000 or they're going to break my legs. I'm serious. My mother, Monique, froze. Her hand, which had been buffing her nails, halted mid-motion. What is that? She whispered. David's voice. You fool, do you imagine I'm made of money? The old man is, and that Imani, they're scrutinizing everything. Monique emitted a tiny, strangled gasp. David, Marcus's voice, what are we going to do? What about the $2 million loan? The bank called again. They're discussing an audit. David's voice. Calm yourself. We merely need to persevere. The old man, his heart is frail. He's quite weak. It's merely a matter of time. As soon as they are gone, as soon as they are finally gone, all that money will be ours. The $38 million. I shall settle the bank. You settle your bookies and that useless girl, Imani. She will receive nothing. She won't even comprehend what has transpired. She'll be on the street where she belongs. Now, let's practice the signatures again. We must achieve accuracy this time. The recording ceased. The ensuing silence was absolute. It was the silence of a sepulchre. Tiffany's face contorted into an expression of profound, horrified bewilderment. She gazed at Marcus, her eyes wide. What? What signatures? Marcus, what is he referring to? Monique stared at her husband, her face ashen, her mouth agape in a silent O of disbelief. David, you forged my father's signature. David was utterly immobile, a statue. The smugness, the anger, the arrogance, all had vanished, incinerated by unadulterated terror. He fixated on the small black speaker as if it were a bomb that had just detonated in his grasp. He finally stirred. It wasn't a word, it was a guttural roar, a desperate, animalistic sound from a cornered creature. No! He lunged across the desk, his hands clawing not at me but at the speaker. He intended to destroy it. He intended to obliterate the evidence. He never reached it. A formidable figure in a dark suit moved with impossible swiftness. Mr. Jameson, who had been silent by the door, stepped forward and interposed his entire physique between my father and the desk. He made no physical contact. He simply stood there, a human bulwark of expensive tailoring and unassailable authority. I would refrain from doing that, David, Mr. Jameson stated, his voice dangerously placid. David recoiled as if he had struck solid stone. He gasped for breath in ragged, convulsive inhalations, his eyes wild, darting from the speaker to me, then to Mr. Jameson. That's a fabrication. He shrieked, his voice cracking. It's a deep fake. You manufactured it. That's not me. That's not my voice. It is your voice, I countered, my own voice cutting through his panic. And it is Marcus's voice. It was recorded in Grandpapa's library 2 weeks prior to their passing. Grandmama Alara was exceptionally meticulous. I retrieved the black ledger. I opened it. Let us review, I proposed, my voice cold, resolute, and final. I was no longer the girl in the inexpensive suit. I was the one in command. Marcus Washington. My brother flinched as if I had struck him. Over $500,000 in advances from Grandpapa Theodore and Grandmama Arara. Except they were not advances. They were wire transfers to cover gambling indiscretions at the MGM Grand and to 2 offshore bookmakers. That isn't borrowing, Marcus. That is known as embezzlement. Tiffany emitted a high-pitched squeak. $500,000. I turned the page. And then there is you, Father. I met his gaze directly. $2 million, a business loan from Sunrust Bank. A loan that your failing enterprise, this dilapidated establishment, could never have qualified for independently. Therefore, you did not apply a loan. You applied by fraudulently endorsing Grandpa Theodore's signature, illegally pledging his private stock portfolio as collateral. A portfolio to which you had no rightful claim. That is not business, Father. That is bank fraud, a federal offense. I closed the book. Your benevolent proposal of $10 million. It was not benevolent, I stated, the fragments of my anger coalescing. It was a desperate gamble. You were not seeking reconciliation. You were attempting to utilize my inheritance to repay your $2 million fraudulent loan before the bank initiates an audit. I glanced at my new expensive timepiece, a gift from Mr. Jameson. 9 days. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. You intended to pilfer from me, to conceal your pilfering from him. I straightened to my full height. You are not engaged in a negotiation, I declared, my voice resonating with all the authority they had attempted to suppress within me. You are not facing a reconciliation fee. You, I gestured towards Marcus, and you, I pointed at my father, are both confronting a minimum of 10 to 15 years each in federal penitentiary. In that instant, all the air seemed to drain from the commodious office. The phrase federal prison hung in the stale, toxic atmosphere, thick and poisonous. The absolute silence was broken, not by my father, nor by Marcus. It was broken by Tiffany. She sprang from the vinyl sofa, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her face was no longer bewildered. It was a mask of pure reptilian revulsion and sheer panic. She was not looking at me. She was staring at her husband, Marcus. Criminal? She shrieked, her voice cracking into a piercing, ugly wail. You informed me your family was affluent. You declared yourself a business prodigy. And you are a common thief, $500,000 in bank fraud. Marcus cowered, raising a hand. Tiffany, darling, I can explain. It's not what it appears to be. Explain? She screamed, backing away from him, snatching her expensive handbag from the sofa. I am not going to prison for you. I am not going to prison for this abhorrent family. Do you genuinely believe I will stand by a failed charlatan? Do you imagine I will raise my child while you are decaying in a cell? She looked at me, then at David, then back at Marcus, her eyes brimming with unadulterated venom. I am finished. I have already contacted my legal counsel. The divorce decree will be served to whatever federal correctional facility you are about to be dispatched. She stormed out of the office, slamming the door with such force that the entire wall vibrated. Her heels clicked frantically down the corridor and then faded into silence, and just like that, Marcus's final advocate had departed. My brother, the golden child, emitted a choked, gasping sound. He slid off the vinyl sofa. He did not fall. He simply deflated. He crumpled onto the soiled industrial carpet, burying his face in his hands, and began to weep. Deep, heaving, pathetic sobs of a spoiled child who had finally, irrevocably been apprehended. My father, David, remained motionless, petrified, a hollow effigy. He was not observing me. He was not observing Marcus. He was fixated on the black ledger on his desk, as if it were a serpent that had just delivered a fatal bite. All the power, the arrogance, the rage, it had all dissipated, replaced by the vacant, terrified husk of a defeated old man. Witnessing her husband and her golden son utterly vanquished, my mother, Monique, resorted to her ultimate weapon, guilt. She rushed towards me, not with aggression, but with her hands clasped as if in supplication. The counterfeit tears began to flow instantaneously. "Imani, darling, please, sweetie, we are family," she implored, her voice thick with moisture and desperation. "You cannot inflict this upon your father and your brother. They made errors, but they cherish you. You cannot decimate your family in this manner. Consider the family's honor. Please, Imani." I simply looked at her, at the woman who had stood in the doorway less than 24 hours prior, arms crossed, proclaiming my worthlessness and expelling me. "Honor," I stated, my voice like stone. "The honor of this family perished a considerable time ago. You all extinguished it." I took a step back, withdrawing from her desperate, grasping hands. "You elected avarice, you elected deception, and you chose to cast me out." I observed her, my unmoving father, and my weeping brother. This is not me destroying the family. This is the family finally confronting what it annihilated, all by itself. My mother's desperate plea lingered in the air. A final, pathetic attempt at control. I looked at her, at the woman who had consistently viewed me as a burden, now imploring me to salvage the very individuals who had sought my destruction. I turned from her and met Mr. Jameson's gaze. He awaited my signal. "Mr. Jameson," I stated, my voice clear and definitive, "you are correct. Contacting the district attorney is the appropriate legal course of action." I then glanced back at my father, who remained frozen, and my brother, who was a pathetic heap on the floor. "I am not my father," I declared. "I am not my mother. I will not be gratuitously cruel. I will not be the one to dispatch them to prison." I let the implication resonate. A faint glimmer of desperate, pathetic hope flickered in my father's lifeless eyes. Not today, at least. I returned my attention to David. "I am going to present you with a choice, not a negotiation, a choice." Mr. Jameson, comprehending my strategy, stepped forward and placed a new thick stack of documents on the desk, directly atop the black ledger. "This," I announced, "is your singular and definitive path forward. It is not an advantageous one, but it is preferable to federal incarceration. You have two options. Option A," I continued, "is that I take no action. I retrieve my ledger and my USB drive. Mr. Jameson and I will depart through that doorway. And prior to 5 o'clock this afternoon, an unredacted, complete copy of this evidence will reside on the desks of the district attorney, the IRS, and the FBI. You, father, will be apprehended for bank fraud. You, Marcus, will be apprehended for embezzlement. You will both forfeit everything. You will serve lengthy prison sentences, and I will sleep soundly." I allowed the weight of that pronouncement to settle. Monique emitted a faint, choking sound. "Or," I proceeded, "option B." I tapped the new stack of papers. "You will sign these documents precisely here, at this moment. No discussions, no alterations." What is it?" my father whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "It is your unqualified capitulation," I articulated. 1. David will immediately tender your resignation as Chief Executive Officer of Washington Consulting. You will transfer complete ownership of the company, its assets, and all its liabilities, including the $2 million fraudulent loan, to me. I will liquidate this pathetic enterprise to satisfy the bank's claim. You will depart with absolutely nothing. 2, I stated, turning to my brother. You, Marcus, will execute documents agreeing to commence a 90-day inpatient gambling addiction treatment program immediately. Mr. Jameson's vehicle is awaiting. Following that, you will secure employment, a genuine one. I am indifferent whether it involves flipping hamburgers. You will never receive a single cent of my funds again. And 3, I declared, addressing both of them, you will both sign a legally binding instrument drafted by Mr. Jameson, unequivocally renouncing any and all current or future claims to the estate of Theodore and R. Washington. You will renounce any claim to my $38 million. You will renounce any claim to my residence. You will legally pledge never to contact me again for any financial purpose whatsoever. You would leave us with nothing, Monique finally shrieked, her voice once again saturated with venom. You would liquidate the company? That is your father's life's work. His life's work, I retorted sharply, was a fraudulent construct built upon my grandfather's capital. This is my proposition. Accept it or reject it. I consulted my watch. You have 1 minute to decide before I contact the FBI myself. My father surveyed the documents. He observed his weeping son. He regarded his horrified wife. He understood he was defeated. The will to fight had been extinguished. Slowly, his hand trembling so violently that he could barely grip the pen, he extended it. He uncapped it and signed the initial page. He then pushed the documents toward Marcus. Marcus, his face streaked with tears and mucus, looked at the document, then at me. He signed it, his signature a pathetic, childish scrawl. They signed every single page. Mr. Jameson stepped forward, gathered the documents, and neatly placed them in his attaché case. He snapped it shut. I turned and walked toward the door. I did not look back. Imani, wait, my mother pleaded one final time. I paused at the threshold. You were correct about one matter, Mother, I stated without turning around. We are finished. Then I exited and I never encountered them again. 1 year later, I stood on the same balcony where I had confronted my family. It was no longer a residence. The gates stood open. The grounds teemed with individuals. Melodies drifted upwards from the terrace. I looked up at the door, where elegant, polished brass letters proclaimed the Theodore and Alla Washington Center for the Arts. A new inscription gleamed in the twilight. I had retained my $38 million. I had also honored my pledge. I had utilized the funds to transform my formidable dwelling into a sanctuary for young, underprivileged black artists. Children much like myself. Children possessing a talent that no one believed in. My father's company had been liquidated. I had settled the $2 million loans, thereby satisfying the bank and preserving my grandfather's reputation. David and Monique lost their home. They now reside in a modest rented apartment across town. I am informed that my mother contacts her relatives, complaining about her cruel, ungrateful daughter. Most of them have ceased to respond to her calls. Marcus successfully completed his rehabilitation program. He is employed at a gas station during the night shift. Tiffany predictably divorced him. She attempted to sue me for emotional distress damages. The lawsuit was dismissed by the court in less than 10 minutes. I observed the gathering. I saw young painters, sculptors, and musicians all laughing, all dreaming. Mr. Jameson was present, smiling, a glass of champagne in his hand. I contemplated the black ledger, now secured. I reflected on the $38 million, now actively generating benefit. I realized my retribution was never about the monetary sum. It was not even about the residence. My retribution was about safeguarding a legacy. My grandparents had espoused integrity. They had championed truth. My family had endeavored to corrupt that legacy with their avarice and their falsehoods. I did not merely preserve the funds, I preserved their names. I recalled my grandmother's final admonition to me. It is time to roar. I gazed out at the new generation of artists, all thriving within this edifice built on rectitude. I smiled, I had roared, and at long last the entire world was listening. The profound lesson gleaned from this narrative is that your intrinsic value is never defined by those who endeavor to diminish you. Amani's family perceived her as a worthless scapegoat, yet her grandparents recognized her inherent integrity. They bequeathed to her not merely financial resources as a safeguard, but the truth itself as a weapon. This account powerfully demonstrates that antagonists, even within one's own family, wield only the authority you accord them. True fortitude is not inherited wealth. It is the courage to expose a painful reality. Reclaim your own narrative and leverage that power to protect the legacy of those who genuinely loved you. Have you ever been compelled to expose a difficult family truth? Share your experiences in the commentary section below.